attention, please? Sorry to yell into the microphone. I didn't know how loud it was being. But if I could have everybody's attention. We're going to get started with this. I want to give you really the headlines of why we're here. I'm then going to ask Maureen to say a few words. And then I'll come back up and fill in some of the details, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Why are we here today? Mumia Abu-Jamal has filed yet another PCRA, an attempt to get out of jail. Of course, Larry Krasner never notified us, never notified Maureen of it. We had to discover it ourselves. And we're here today to announce that we are filing and have filed a petition with the President Judge of the Court of Common Pleas to have Larry Krasner disqualified from having anything to do with defending against this latest piece of rubbish PCRA that Mumia Abu-Jamal has filed. And we're doing it not because we just made up a procedure or how to do this. You may all recall that we were in the Supreme Court, Maureen and I, last year, where the Supreme Court found that Krasner had all of these conflicts of interest. But the Supreme Court didn't act because they said the fifth PCRA was a piece of rubbish and they were going to dismiss it anyway, so it was moot. But Justice Doherty, our own Philadelphia Justice Doherty, entered an extensive opinion citing Larry Krasner's undeniable conflicts of interest and said to Maureen Faulkner and George Paquetto, if Mumia Abu-Jamal files another PCRA, which he has, here's what you should do. File a petition with the President Judge of the Court of Common Pleas and ask her, under the statutory authority that she has, to disqualify Larry Krasner, have the Attorney General step in and defend it. If he doesn't want to do it, we will petition for an independent prosecutor, a real prosecutor, not a shameful defense attorney who refuses to carry out his oath of office. As I said, I'm going to come back up and answer some questions and give you some more of the details, but those are the headlines. That's why we're here. And I want to thank everybody in this room for coming, because one of the big mistakes that we want to avoid is allowing Larry Krasner to operate under cover of night. When no one's watching, you wouldn't believe the stuff he tries to get away with. And what we're doing here, and what everybody in this room here is doing, is keeping the spotlight on Krasner, so he can't pull this shit anymore on us, and we're going to hold him responsible. With that, let me introduce your hero, your heroine, the one that never gives up, ever. We're 40 years into this now, Maureen Faulkner.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone who have attended this press conference on such a short notice. I just flew in yesterday, and the reason we're here is because I live in California, and I found out through a Facebook that Judith Ritter, Mumia Abu-Jamal's attorney, filed something, and it was out in Facebook before I was ever notified of anything. Here I am, the victim, the survivor of a violent crime, and this is how I found out. The Victims Association and District Attorney's Office did not notify me. How many other people is this happening to in the city of Philadelphia? We must make an awareness that this is going on. So I decided to come back and speak out and make everyone aware, and all the law-abiding citizens know, that Larry Krasner is just such a horrible person. He shakes me to the core. Once again, over 40 years back in Philadelphia, speaking out for my husband who has died so many years ago. But think of all the other officers that have lost their lives. What's going on with their cases? I mean, we really need to be diligent, and we really need to get him out.
Yes.
Impeach Krasner. Yes, please do. Impeach Krasner. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. She's our best spokesperson, I can tell you that. By the way, all of you know that I'm also joined on this stage by one of Philadelphia's truly great prosecutors for many, many years, Joe McGill. Joe prosecuted Abu-Jamal. He did an impeccable job on it. They've been trying for 40 years to criticize his work, and not one judge, not one anybody has ever said Joe McGill didn't handle this trial beautifully, wasn't a perfect prosecutor in this case, that they're still trying 40 years later to assail the job that Joe carried out with utmost integrity is really a disgrace, and it's a waste of taxpayers' monies to have to keep defending this. But Joe, I salute you. And unfortunately for Mumia Abu-Jamal, Joe is still with us, healthy as hell. And if he ever gets a hearing, Joe's going to be witness number one. Great job. I want to also thank John McNesby. Let me tell you something. I've been in Philadelphia politics and Philadelphia law enforcement and everything for 45 years. And I've known all the FOP leadership, and John McNesby is really the best. He has been absolutely 1,000% rock solid on this. When we called him and we told him about this latest filing, Mumia Abu-Jamal, he said, George, let's get it together. Give you the facility, we'll do whatever has to be done. We are not going to lay down on this. And we got a real champion and warrior here in John McNesby, I can tell you that. I'm really proud to know John and consider John a friend. Just to get to the little bit more of the meat, here's the three things that Mumia Abu-Jamal is saying went wrong with his prosecution. The first thing he's saying is one of the witnesses was bribed for his testimony. Here's what really happened. There was a cab driver who absolutely at 3 o'clock in the morning eyewitnessed from about 10 feet away the murder of Maureen Faulkner. He gave a statement that night. Mumia Abu-Jamal did it. The following week or two, he was interviewed by the police and the district attorney's office. Again, Mumia Abu-Jamal did it. He testified at a preliminary hearing. Mumia Abu-Jamal did it. He testified at a trial. Mumia Abu-Jamal did it. After all that, and after the trial, he came up to Joe McGill. He says, by the way, I've been missing a lot of work on this. Any chance of getting me reimbursed for my pay? And Joe McGill, as a gentleman and as he always has, politely said, I'll look into it. Now, of course, we cannot pay anybody anything. Joe McGill never said he'd pay him anything. He had no intention of doing it, but he was being polite to the man. A few months later, the gentleman wrote a handwritten note. Hey, Joe, did you ever get that money for me? That's the basis, this newly discovered evidence. That's the basis of why Mumia Abu-Jamal's conviction should be overturned, because the witness was bribed. It is the biggest crock you've ever heard of. It's been raised before. Joe McGill has signed affidavits about it. That's going nowhere. Second ground that he's trying to raise again. Another eyewitness that was there for the murder at 3 o'clock in the morning was a prostitute. And she did the exact same thing. She saw it. She told the police exactly what she saw. She testified, so on and so forth. Thereafter, in having to deal with her own criminal charges for prostitution, and she was a prostitute, she made no bones about Some of the witnesses didn't show up at her trial, and they gave her a lesser charge because they couldn't have the witnesses. After the trial was already well over. Joe McGill had nothing to do with that. It was handled by a different part of the DA's office. But that's another reason why Abu-Jamal should be regarded as innocent now. Because some prostitute beat, the 15th charge of prostitution some night. And the third basis for this new recycled PCRA is that somehow racism was injected into the trial, and Joe McGill picked the jury not because of who the best jurors might be, but because of race. It's raised, Abu-Jamal and his lawyers have raised this Batson, it's called a Batson challenge, a race challenge to the jury. They've raised it for 30 years now. They raised it in the state courts, they've raised it in the federal courts. Every judge that's looked at this over and over and over again has rejected it. Joe McGill gave an affidavit which is impeccably unassailable as to how he did his jury selection, what the basis was, and why it was completely lawful. So those are the three reasons why Abu-Jamal is trying to get another shot at getting sprung. And as I said before, it's not difficult to defend against this petition. But what we have to make sure is it is defended against. We cannot trust Larry Krasner to handle even this ridiculous petition because he's going to try to spring Mumia Abu-Jamal from jail. He wants it to be the crown jewel of his criminal justice reform. He wants to pretend like this guy's been a political prisoner all his life, and it's just an absolute disgrace as to what's going on. I'm for criminal justice reform. Maureen's for criminal justice reform. So's John and Joe. Pick the right case, guys. This is not the right case. This is a case of a stone cold cop killer who's exactly where he belongs, in jail. Thank you very much.
Should be 6 feet under.
I want to thank everyone for coming and supporting me for so many years. I also want to thank John. You are stellar man. I want to thank George for stepping up and being on this case and helping me through such a long, tedious, horrible event the Faulkner family and I have had for over 40 years. Thank you.